Could you put your hands up if you went low carb and lost more than 1 stone in weight? Just look around. Just look around. So these are all people who've gone low carb and lost more than a stone. Could you put your hand up if you've gone low carb and lost more than 4 stone? Look around the room. Look around the room. So that has to give you hope, doesn't it? So people have done something that's made a difference, and that's what I'm interested in. I'm really interested in what works, and can we do more of it? Oh, and also, why does it work? So what works and why does it work? So let's make a start. Oh, the excuse for me coming is that we've just celebrated so I'm a GP from just north of Liverpool. Some of my patients are actually here. Oh, bless them, yes. And anyway, the thing is, my practice, we've just celebrated getting 100 people into drug-free type 2 diabetes remission. 100. The reason, let me tell you, that is so amazing, because I'm really quite an old GP now. I started work in 1986, and until 2012, I hadn't seen drug-free type 2 diabetes remission not one single time. I didn't know it was even possible. So when I was fatter, I was hungry the whole time. And that's because I kept having biscuits through the day, and I was constantly hungry because I couldn't burn my own belly fat. And as you can see, my belly fat has gone. I burnt it away now because I am keto. So this is why a little bit of biscuit through the day releases insulin, but then you can't burn fat. So I'd just like to ask, could you put your hand up if you've been surprised that keto means you're not hungry? Just put your hand up. Look around the room again. It isn't 1, and it isn't 2, and it isn't 30. Most of the people in the room have noticed they're less hungry when they go keto, and it's because for the first time for many years, they're able to burn their own body stores of fat. And you have to go quite low carb. So the difference between medium carb restriction, so if low carb is less than 130 grams of carb a day. If I had 130 grams of carb a day, I could have about 4 biscuits or half a slice of bread 4 times a day. That would stop me from being able to burn fat. It would be too much insulin for me to go keto and burn fat. You go keto when you're burning fat, so keto is very low carb. Doesn't suit everybody, or many of my patients start low carb and then over time learn what works and tend to go lower carb. So I'm not telling anybody to do anything. I would say find out what works for you, and it's great not being hungry. That makes your life a lot easier. And this is why. So insulin does a lot of interesting things to your brain, to appetite, all sorts of things. But it stops you from burning fat. And that's a fact that I did not know. As a doctor, I had no idea why I was hungry or anything. And unfortunately, a great many healthcare professionals are still a bit unsure about what keto does and why you might do it. So we're hoping to educate them through the PhD, but it has some advantages for some people. Okay, so many of you have seen this before, and if you haven't, there are free copies on the Public Health Collaboration table over there. So what I did, I was looking at, could I help my patients understand how carby foods affected their blood sugar? So a small bowl of boiled rice will affect your blood glucose to a similar extent as 10 teaspoons of sugar. Okay? Because starch is concentrated sugar. So a bowl of rice is just digest down into loads of sugar. And that's really useful information if you have type 2 diabetes, because from what I said before, you don't want the high blood sugar, because high blood sugar makes me feel ill, by the way. I can't think well. I feel drowsy with high blood sugar. So I don't want to eat rice because it's bad for me and it's damaging my arteries. And I didn't understand consequences of the dietary choices I was making. So these infographics help you look at different foods and how will that food affect your blood sugar. So there we are, boiled potato. Who knew that even a baked potato, which I thought was a healthy food, will rise your blood sugar to the same extent as 9, possibly 10 teaspoons of sugar. I thought baked potatoes were good food. So on the Public Health Collaboration website, there are 7 of these infograms, and they've been translated into 14 languages. So there's no excuse, almost whatever language you need them in, we're trying to get them there. So those are the infographics on helping people make better choices. This is how I help my patients understand the consequences of what they eat if they want to have a lower blood sugar. You don't have to look at that. That's the diet sheet. That's the Norwood Avenue standard diet sheet. We publish it, so I've told you before, we publish our data. How many papers have I published? Probably about 10 papers I've published, and most of them are open access because the Public Health Collaboration pays for that, and most of them have the diet sheet in. Or you could buy one of our books, of which the profit goes to the Public Health Collaboration. The Calbeezy cookbooks have Jen and I as co-authors, and all of the diet stuff is in the Calbeezy cookbooks. When I started in 2013, I was so excited by the initial results I was getting because I couldn't believe the patients who were reversing diabetes. I couldn't believe how well they were. And I was desperate to get out into the world and tell everybody, this is amazing, you've got to do it. Nothing could have prepared me for what was waiting out there. I was booed and hissed, I've been shouted at, I've had hate mail. Amazing! I couldn't understand why was people so angry when I was helping my patients. What was going on? It was weird. These are some of the things. One of the points was, well, increasing dietary fat is bound to kill you. So that, people felt, well, if it's low carb, it's high fat. And if it's high fat, isn't that going to clog up your arteries and won't you be dead pretty soon? So that was one of the first problems. The next one was, this was with the Atkins diet as well. Many of you remember the Atkins diet, which was very low carb, quite keto really, eating a lot of meat. And the thing with the Atkins diet, they said that increasing dietary protein will injure your kidneys. Have any of you heard that protein might injure your kidneys? Yeah. Well, people stood up in my things and shouted at me, what about the kidneys? What about the kidneys? Actually, a good question. A good question. And in fact, a couple of years ago, this is a magazine called Medscape, and it said here, a high-protein diet, often recommended as a way to lose weight and stay healthy, appears to be harmful to the kidneys in individuals with apparently normal kidney function. So when I read that, I was really worried, because I'm not a doctor that wants to harm my patients. Maybe I'm doing a terrible thing. It's funny, because I hadn't noticed anybody coming to harm, but maybe I'm doing a terrible thing. So I started worrying a little bit about renal function. Oh, and you've met that this is lovely Jen. And Jen said, instead of worrying, David, because she's a clever woman, instead of worrying, why don't you actually look at the data you've got on your pensions? Maybe you know the answer. And it was unfortunate, really, because from the beginning, I tried to worry about lipids, cholesterol, liver function, blood pressure, but I'd missed something. I hadn't bothered collecting the renal function because I didn't think it was important, so I'd missed the trick. And Jen said, well, why don't you just have a look at the renal function? And I started to look at the renal function. And this is one of the first patients I found and I'd missed. So this is kidney function, and this is the EGFR, but for you, going up is good and down would be bad. And this is somebody who at the beginning in 2016 had such bad renal function, they couldn't use metformin because his kidneys were too weak. So he was put on insulin because he was too sick to have metformin. But look, after a while he went low carb and his renal function, look, it's gone up. He's had normal renal function, kidney function for years. And of course he's off his insulin, and his diclofenac, and his blood pressure treatment. So that was one case that looked as if it disproved what the magazine had said. And then what I did, somewhere in this room, Christine, where are you? Christine is over there. She's a saint. She is a specialist statistician. And Christine also gives her time for free to look at the statistics of what's going on with my patients. So we got all of the data to do with my patients and looked at, well, what we've been offering this service since 2013, what is happening to the blood pressure, cholesterol, renal function. Absolutely everything has improved. So I'll just go through this. I mean, if you had a tablet that improved cholesterol, improved liver function, improved blood pressure, improved diabetes, one tablet, if it could do all of those things, wouldn't that be a valuable tablet? And here's me doing this thing, and I get shouted at. Weird, isn't it? But the patients are very, very grateful. Let's just look at the figures. So that's the data from 143 patients. On average, I think they were 61 years old. They weighed about 100 kilos. What happened to these 143 patients who went low carb for an average of about 2.5 years? So they lost about 9.5 kilos. Well, that won't surprise many of you because nearly all you have lost about 9.5 kilos. The hemoglobin A1C, how sugary the blood was, improves amazingly. Amazingly. And actually now, at Norwood Avenue, for people who go low carb, 50% of them are going to put their diabetes into drug-free remission, which is amazing. So that's a pretty powerful intervention. So the blood sugars improve. But the renal function also improves. So that's creatinine and eGFR. That improves significantly. The cholesterol there improves. The HDL cholesterol is a positive thing because that's a protective cholesterol, so that improved. The triglyceride dropped by 1/3. So this is, if you have a fasting lipid profile, then triglyceride is a really important result, and that improved by 1/3. And look at the blood pressures. We found that we stopped 1/3 of all the drugs people were on for their blood pressure. So I wasn't just stopping drugs for diabetes, I'm stopping 1/3 of everybody that's on drugs for their blood pressure has to stop them because their blood pressure is so good. So it's a pretty surprising result, a really, really surprising result. And the good news is there are doctors all over the country now replicating this because we've written an e-learning module, the Royal College e-learning module, and over 2,000 GPs have done this teaching module. So we've started with me being shouted at in 2013, and now thousands of GPs in the UK are doing it, and hundreds of thousands of people around the world are doing it. So we are making progress. This is my latest paper, our new paper. I won't bother with that. But if any of you want to read one of my papers, all you've got to do is Google renal function, Unwin, and diabetes. Right, why had I missed that kidney function improved? Why had I missed that? That was odd, wasn't it? Because actually, the first thing is, people of 61 have deteriorating kidney function. So as you get older, the kidneys are supposed to deteriorate. And actually, they're supposed to deteriorate by a figure, it doesn't matter what the units are, but it's 1 per year. So if these people were 2.5 years older at the end of the study, on average, their kidney function should have deteriorated by 2.5, because that's 2.5 years, isn't it? But here's the thing, they weren't just old, they have diabetes, and diabetes is supposed to knacker your kidneys as well, isn't it? So their kidney function should have deteriorated over the 2.5 years. And the surprising thing was, it actually improved. To my amazement, it didn't deteriorate, it went exactly the opposite way. So it should have gone down minus 2.5, and it went up plus 2.4. So even though it's a small amount, because so many of them found this, and it's done exactly the opposite that age and diabetes should have done, this is a really unusual result and a fascinating one. So then we could break down what happened to kidney function. 40% of the people had improved kidney function. 40% had no change at all, and some did have a worse kidney function, which is to be expected because they were older and they did have diabetes. Overall, the improvements were very significant. This is a pie graph of diabetic control. So 97% of the people that opted to go low carb got an improved diabetic control. This is a graph, and it's showing the average hemoglobin A1C achieved for people with diabetes in every age group across the country. So if you look, there are now, by the way, 1,600 children with type 2 diabetes. That's terrible. So there are 1,600 children with diabetes. What's the average? How well controlled is their diabetes? So if you look there, they're achieving about, maybe you get them down to 49, hemoglobin A1C at 49. But if you look at people over the age of 40, the average, what they're achieving is over 56. So most people that are older in routine NHS care are not achieving good control of their diabetes. And we know that if you don't achieve good control of your diabetes, over time you come to harm. And if you look on that graph, what we achieve at Norwood Avenue, so the red arrow is the average achievement at Norwood Avenue. So we're doing better in any age group than is done in the health service. And this is really important. We're showing it can be done in the NHS on 10-minute appointments. It's possible. When, you know, it's an ordinary practice in the north of England, isn't it? And here's another thing, we're not spending money on the drugs for diabetes. So this is nationally kept figures for how much every practice in our area spends on diabetes. And our practice spends the least on drugs for diabetes because we don't need them for any practice in the area. So we actually save £58,000 per year on drugs for diabetes alone because I'm not using drugs. And the interesting fact, if in the country every GP prescribed as we prescribe, you would save £270 million on the drug budget. So when we say there isn't money to do things better, there could be, because the drug budget is very expensive. We spend 10% of the entire NHS budget is spent on diabetes, on people who are sick. But if only we could help them not be sick, we could save so much money and so much suffering too. Oh, this is another one of the papers. So if you Google BMJ nutrition and Unwin and diabetes, this paper also has the diet sheet in, and in the supplementary file for anybody that's a clinician is the nurse protocol and many other ways of how you would run it in your own practice. And the figure on the right is the altmetric score. So all the papers that are written are given a score of how popular they are. And this is, I'm showing you this to show that low carb is really going places, because this paper was published last year, and there have been 14 million papers published papers, and that paper has come in the top, probably 0.5% in terms of popularity. The average altmetric score is about 50, and that scored 1,343. It's sky high, and it's so hopeful because it shows that people are reading the papers we publish and are interested, or the score wouldn't be that high. And so suddenly now, if you want to publish a low carb paper, the editors have learned, oh, those are popular. The people who write the papers know that there's lots of interest, so it's helping generate interest in keto and low carb. One or two, I love some of the facts that we dug up in that paper. My favourite fact is that older people, and I am an older person, older people do just as well on low carb as the young ones. Isn't that brilliant? I used to write old people off thinking, oh, they've got a slow metabolism, leave them alone, they can't, poor things, they can't really help themselves. That's nonsense. On Norwood Avenue, the people over 65 and the people over 70 are getting results slightly better than the 30-year-olds. Isn't that brilliant? Isn't that a message of hope for old people like me? Old people, we can do stuff. I think it's because we know how to cook. I think it's because maybe we're not bringing up children and we have more free time, perhaps. Or maybe we've been to more funerals, so we're kind of, you know, you're aware of mortality, aren't you, when you get older? What else did we learn? Oh yeah, this is really important, pre-diabetes. So some of you in this room have talked to me, you have pre-diabetes. We know at Norwood Avenue, if you go low carb, 93% of everybody with pre-diabetes will be sorted out in 6 months in low carb. 93%. Now that is really amazing. And it shows the value of keeping data, because I wouldn't know if I hadn't collected all the data. It's really worth, data is power, really, and it helps, difficult to criticise somebody getting a 93% cure rate, really. Oh, here's Chris again. So that is Chris, one of my early, we wrote him up in the British Medical Journal in, I think it was probably 2015. That's Chris before on the right there, weighing about 20 stone, and there he is on the left. He's joined a gym, he's not on any medication, his blood pressure is sorted, he doesn't need medication for his diabetes, he's properly well. And the good news is, he was 40 years old on the right, and he's over 60 now, and he's never had such good health. Isn't that amazing? He's older and got better health, and I know some of you in this room have told me exactly the same story. I'm better now than I was 20 years ago. Look there at the hemoglobin A1C graph. So up is bad because that means you're more sugary. And that's Chris's sugariness since about the year 2009. But oh dear, look, his blood sugar goes up there. His blood sugar goes up. And a lot of clinicians, when people have been low carb for a while and the blood sugar goes up, they go, oh, what a shame, low carbs failed. Never mind, here's the metformin, the insulin, or whatever. That wasn't what had happened. That was carb creep. Just carb creep. It wasn't that the diet has failed. He'd gone back to biscuits. He's just ordinary human, he's Chris. And I said to him, instead of saying, oh dear, low carb isn't working for you, here's the metformin, I said, your blood's very sugary, what have you been eating? And he goes, oh, fair cop. Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm a mug, it's biscuits, I need to do something. And let's have a look what he did. There we are, so Dr Unwin says, you know, what you're doing, and it comes down again. And now his blood sugar is better than it's ever been because Chris has learned stuff. All of us, as we get older, learn stuff. And he learned from his mistakes, and he didn't want to be ill. But you know, it's okay to make mistakes because you learn from them. What isn't okay is to keep making the same mistake and not learn. Now, you know, intelligence is about learning from our mistakes. And we've got many patients, Jen and I, we call them the triple dippers. And they have a graph which goes wrong 3 times, but every time they learn a lesson, they've learned something really useful, and it's better and better. So for all of us, you know, when you make mistakes, it's fine. Try and think, what would you do differently next time? We had to learn to do a keto Christmas, because the first Christmas was a disaster for ages, and you really have, instead of beating yourself up, think, how could I do it differently? So we now have a successful keto Christmas that's fun. How do you do a foreign holiday? All of these things are problems to be solved, but it's worth it because it's about your health. And if you slip up, that's completely fine. I always say to patients, it's about what you do next. It's not really about what you just did. What would you do differently? And learn from your mistakes, as Chris has. And he's now in every way, with those lessons about biscuits learned, and his family are now really helping him. All sorts of things have come together. Each of us has a journey going on for years and years as we learn, as we change. Jen would always say, just notice what works and do more of it, and notice what doesn't work and do less of that. We are also ongoing support is key. Jen's giving you you're chatting for far too long signal. For people beginning to faint and get carried away in ambulances because it's going on too long. Ongoing support is very important, Jen. Ongoing support is really important. That's why we all need to join together. You need support groups. We need the GPs to work and the nurses and everybody. We all need to work together towards helping people do what works for them. Instead of me telling you what to do, you need to work out what works for you, and then it's my job to kind of support you, not be critical. Oh God, that's boring, so I'll go general. Please, Jen. That just shows our remission rates are going up and up. Hooray! Hooray. A final hint. I find that if you tell people you're low carb or you're keto, then other people go, oh, isn't that dangerous, and don't be dying, and the rest of it. But if you say, I eat a diet that promotes green veg, unprocessed meat, eggs, dairy, nuts, seeds, fish and berries, nobody will criticise you for eating that list of foods. So if I go low carb, I get booed and hissed. If I say I ate those foods, people say, oh, it sounds a nice diet, sounds healthy. So sometimes it's the words we use bring in prejudice, which can be very unhelpful. Oh, look. That's the book, the Profits to the Public Health. We bought 60 copies. I think we've only got 4 left. I'm signing them. So I don't need to push the book now, but you can get it quite cheaply on the Works or anything. Oh, last patient. Please meet Brian. Brian. I love Brian. Brian is 82 years old. This is what I mean about older people. So Brian is 82 years old. Can you see I'm holding a tape measure? That is where Brian's belly used to be. Okay? That's where Brian's belly used to be. And I show Brian, really to show he's 82, and he's now, the other day he was late for an appointment, and he came in and said, I'm so sorry I'm late. I was at the gym doing weights. Isn't that wonderful? An 82-year-old. Hooray! Such a great guy, and he's done it himself. He's a very intelligent person, and when he understood, he just got it straight. So sugar's poison, Dr. Unwin. Yes, it is. So I'll eat less sugar, yes. And starch turns into sugar. Oh, yes. Off he goes. Result.